What do you do when the people around you tear you down instead of build you up? Today's guest shares how the early years of his apprenticeship were marked by toxic crews, long hours, and a culture that treated pain and exhaustion as a badge of honor. Instead of walking away, he doubled down on his values, found mentors who were leading differently, and he built a career centered around purpose, brotherhood, and service. Now, after 25 years in the line trade, he's helping crews see themselves as athletes and leaders, capable of more than just surviving, and instead leading and thriving.
When did you feel the most alive at work? Lead with that purpose. It'll change your life.
This is the Work Ready Podcast. Dr. Kevin here, and I just want to personally thank you for being a part of this community. It means the world to us, and without you, we wouldn't exist. The only favor that I will ever ask is that you like or subscribe to the Work Ready Podcast, as this ensures that we can continue to grow this community and bring these amazing guests and conversations to you each week. Thank you so much. Now, let's get to work. Hello and welcome to the Work Ready Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kevin Rindal. So happy to be here today with my good friend, Ken Lulow. Ken and I have known each other for the past several years, and I've just gained such a great appreciation for you, your leadership, and just your innovation in the industry. Ken has been in the trades for over 25 years. Started out as an apprentice and worked his way up, and has held many safety, leadership, operational roles throughout his career, and now is doing consulting with different utility companies all across the United States through Lineworker Solutions. So Ken, so good to have you on the call today.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin, and thanks for the kind introduction. And it's always been a pleasure to work with you and find an individual that's such an inspiration too for the trades and such an advocate for a better future for everybody. And I just appreciate taking the time and opportunity to sit down and chat with you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that, man. Well, Ken, let's start off right from the very beginning, because you're brought up in the trades, and it's pretty much what your life has been. Tell us a little bit more about where you grew up and how you first got exposed to the trades.
Yeah, so third generation line worker. My grandfather was a line worker, and my real father was an electrician. My stepfather was a line worker, and I spent majority of my teenage years with my mom and stepfather. So it's really all that I knew, or the electrical industry is all I knew. And they were a little more the old school kind of line workers there, not always the best role models either. I wasn't necessarily intending to go down that path, just having that exposure and the interaction with the group and with the other, peers, that line workers that would come over, and camaraderie that they had, and that sense of duty about, getting out during storms. And it was, it was really intriguing, and that's what really drew me to this industry. And through like a series of events, like honestly, I wanted to be a firefighter. That was my dream, just to dress up in the uniform and save kittens and put out fires. And I'm really glad that I didn't go that route, and that I did take this route, because it's been an extremely rewarding career for me. And it's just the individuals that I've built relationships with, and the lives that you get to interact with is super rewarding. And you do build those bonds and those relationships in this industry. And I've always been in the Northwest for the majority of my life, a little bit in the New Mexico Southwest area, but most of it's been Northwest. Most of my working career's been here, and it's been a interesting journey to get to this point. And one that's been full of twists and turns, and there's always been a reward at some point to get to this journey. And just being exposed to line work, and I can't really fix a whole lot on the car. I can, work on the power system, and it's just like part of what's ingrained into me, and just I don't even really know how to explain it. That bond that you have with your peers, other than what I would maybe say like sports teams, like the this bond you build on a sports team, or maybe even like in the military. You overcome all these challenges and obstacles to do the impossible and face all those conditions. It's just extremely rewarding career, and uh, one that doesn't get enough recognition to, or even exposure to, individuals coming through high school and you know trying to pick their career pathway, where it can really offer a lot of opportunity and a lot of purpose and direction in a person's life.
Yeah, no, that's, many of you know, I started in sports medicine and I spent my entire life there. I grew up in that world. And it wasn't until about 10 years ago that I was really exposed to the trades. And just the more I learn, I'm like, man, this is just like a path, a career path that we don't expose our kids to. And it's something that I'm a huge advocate now. When people come and talk to me about, what would you recommend your kids do, or young adults these days, and I'm like, I'm a huge advocate for the trades. I just think there's tremendous potential there. And that's thanks for sharing about your growing up experience, third generation. Uh, but even with being a third generation, you had a little bit of your start was a little bit rough at times, and I remember you telling me a story about questioning if you wanted to even go down that path early on. Can you tell us a little bit more about your apprenticeship?
Yeah, absolutely. So I I graduated early, and I had to wait till I turned 18 years old so I could sign the union books and try and get into the trade. And then being exposed to all the individuals in the field and getting taught to how to climb a pole, early on, I felt more maybe a little entitled that I had all these connections. I was third generation, that I could just walk in and I'd get in the apprenticeship. I'd be this line worker. So I went to the interview for the apprenticeship here in the Northwest, and I'm pretty sure that my stepfather had called in some favors to have them take it a little extra rough on me. In the interview that I went through there, now I'm coming in with the mindset that I'm going to get into this industry, then I'm going to be great, and it's just going to be just the next step in the process, just like you would apply to any school. And it was one of the most brutal beatdowns that I've ever experienced in this interview process. And it was very defeating, and it definitely put a bit of a chip on my shoulder, where I left the original interview and I was like, I want nothing to do with this industry, with these people. I don't want to be a line worker. I was already, experienced growing up, and the guys coming over and just how rowdy sometimes they could be. And I was like, I want nothing to do that. I'm going to go back to my original plan. And I made that drive home. It was like a 3 hour drive home, and just kind of stewed on it the whole time and slept on it that night. And I woke up with this massive chip on the shoulder, gonna deciding that I was gonna get in this industry, that I was gonna prove that I belonged, and that I was going to do whatever it took to work my way up and be that individual that I prove that I do belong, that I am capable and good enough. I don't need a family name or anything to get me into the industry. So that was the route I took, and I spent a year as a groundman, just in the trenches doing conduit and all pretty much the tasks that you could imagine that you would have as the ground helper. And applied for the apprenticeship again and came in there, and I said, I may not be the smartest person that will come through today, or the most well polished, but I'll be the hardest worker that comes through here today, and prove that I do belong here. And 8 days later, I got accepted into the apprenticeship, and then I was introduced to a whole new world again, where now, as a young 18-year-old or 19-year-old teenage man in the world, having to navigate um, different personalities and being on the road, and not what I experienced at home or what I had anticipated early on in the career. I would say some of the individuals that I worked for weren't the best influence and were very challenging. And it was sometimes questioning if I made the right decision, if I was cut out for this. And I think that was really good because it taught me a lot of resiliency and lessons early on. And then later on in the apprenticeship, I worked with some of the most incredible line workers there were that also helped because at the time, losing family and not having the adult male guidance in my life, you're at the mercy of the crews and they become your family, and you want to model their behavior and be like them because they're cool and I want to be like them. And early on, I could have gone down a really bad pathway for some of the crews I was working on. Later on, the crews that I worked for have become some of the most incredible mentors that I could have ever asked for. And it was definitely a gift that not only the line work aspect of it, but just as being a good human being and, wanting to make a positive impact on the next generation, be a teacher. And there are just so many lessons that I got taught that I'm glad and grateful that it was that pathway where it was hard early. And then I got to experience what it should be like later on so that I knew who I wanted to model myself for, my behavior, and who I wanted to be like. And yeah, it was definitely an interesting pathway that I took. And I don't think it could have worked out better, right? There was the struggle early on. And like I said, you got to see both sides of the coin and make my own decisions and decide who I really wanted to replicate, who I wanted to be as a journey level worker and as an adult and just as an influence to the trade and, just life in general.
As I hear that story, it sounds like even though it was a rough start, that was actually probably a huge gift for you to not have that feeling of entitlement just because I've been in this trade, have family in it. Like it taught you to actually have to take that ownership and carve your own path. What would you say to a young apprentice out there who's just getting into the trades and they're like, oh man, this is tough. Did I make the right decision? And you kind of touched on that, but anything else that you'd like to add just for those people?
I would say it's tough in the beginning and don't look at um, you know the current situation you're in. Look to the future, believe in yourself, believe in the dream, the purpose that brought you to this industry that you joined for. And at some point in time, there's going to be lessons that you're going to learn, and you're going to see different behaviors and different methods and work practices. All of that is a form of training. I mean, you get trained what you don't want to do, you get trained to what you want to do. Just believe in yourself, stick true to the course that you're on, and when your opportunity comes, you'll be in a good position to be an incredible leader and model for the next generation.
With Vimosity, utility leaders are cutting injuries by up to 50%, keeping crews safer, empowering stronger operational readiness. Teams stay engaged, your safety impact scales across every work group, and you gain the insights to prevent serious injuries before they happen. Vimosity delivers expert content, seamless deployment tools, and real-time risk data in one workforce readiness platform. Learn more at vimosity.com.
Ken, thank you so much for sharing that story just about your own personal experience going through the apprenticeship. And, it's easy when you've grown up in the line trade, you're a third generation, to feel that entitlement. But I would imagine, and it sounds like when I hear your story, is that it actually, the way that you were treated, definitely helped you take that personal ownership, and it ultimately the short-term pain led to better outcomes in terms of your experience growing up in the trades and making it your own. What would you say from an advice standpoint to someone who may be in an apprenticeship right now, and they're experiencing like, pushback from the senior people on their team, or they're just feeling like, oh man, did I make the right decision going into this trade? What would you say to people in that situation?
I would say always double down on yourself, believe in yourself and the journey, the purpose that you are on that brought you to the industry. And the pains are going to be short term. Down the road, you'll be the one who's going to, with the lessons that you've learned, be able to impact and influence the future. And just believe in yourself. And the challenge that you're facing now is just going to make you a better person and a better line worker in general. And you're going to learn a lot of lessons through this experience and just embrace that challenge. Both the mental aspect of it, the physical aspect of it, the emotional side of it too. Just really embrace that and cherish that opportunity because you're learning a whole lot of lessons right now that will be beneficial to you in the future.
Yeah, thanks for that. And, as being a more senior person on the team as well, you and I have talked about this, just the culture has changed a lot in terms of the trades and the way that kind of that old school mentality of, just rub dirt on it, don't talk about anything, don't share your emotions. Like there's been a pretty big shift, I think. And you can maybe, I mean, you're the expert, you can speak to this, but what are some of the opportunities that you would maybe encourage people who are more senior in their role in terms of encouraging the younger generation and being an advocate for them and helping them with that transition? What are some lessons that people might be able to apply in their own life as they start to transition into a leadership role?
There's a few parts, and one of them, I just got to make a comment where you said being a senior person, and that one's still hard to uh, process because I was started in the trade as 18 years old, so I was always the young one, and now 25 years later, uh, 26 years later, it's I am the senior person, and it goes by so fast. Um, in ways as a senior person now, like recognizing the impact that you have on those next generations, the lives that are coming in, just the influence, the impact that you have in recognizing that your legacy that you're going to leave isn't some power lines that you're building up on the right of way or, the next major project or something like that. That will mean nothing. It's going to come down in a storm. It's going to hit by a car and eventually it'll be replaced. It's the people that you have the opportunity to influence and help them to have a successful career and carry on the traditions of the trade and make improvements and be able to innovate and take this trade and the industry into the future, right? Not the same electrical grid that my grandpa was installing that we're still building right now. One that's going to take us to the future where the world needs. And, all the technology's there. It's just to be open-minded and help to make that your legacy, to bring the industry forward and to influence all these next generations and help them to be successful.
I heard you give a presentation on leading with purpose, and you talked about um, a sense of belonging, a sense of service, and a sense of challenge. Can you maybe expand on leading with purpose? And the purpose may be different for other people, but can you share your personal purpose?
I will. I can give you a little bit of the story there too. And being young in the trade, I, journey level when I was at 22 years old and foreman really young, and you're just checking the boxes. And I was successful, I think, by the industry world standards, like checking all the boxes, doing everything that I thought you're supposed to do to be successful and happy, and recognizing that all these boxes that you get to don't actually make me happy. It made me happy for a moment, but it didn't fulfill me. And I was really kind of starting to struggle with that. And just through fate and some experiences that I had through individuals in the apprenticeship class that I was helping to influence in a positive way and help them to be successful, led me on a bit of a quest or a journey to kind of explore my purpose in life. And I come to realize that through that chain of events that my purpose wasn't building, power lines. It wasn't on being able to be the fastest crew or the, whichever big job that you're out to tackle to conquer that challenge. It was the actual people and being able to influence them and help them to be successful. And what I recognized early on too is from some of the leaders that I had is we all learn differently. We're all unique. We have our own unique skill sets, and to take the opportunity to not compare every individual to you and your skill set, recognize them for their unique gifts and reach them where they're at and use your knowledge and your skill to encourage them and support them to believe in themselves and achieve their personal success, whatever that might be. And I got a phone call from one of the apprentices that I'd helped, get through a tough time. And that phone call was more rewarding than any promotion, any raise I've ever got. I even at one of my old companies got a Employee of the Year award. That phone call, hands down, was one of the most rewarding experiences that I've ever had compared to anything I've ever gotten. And that's where I found that my real purpose is being able to make a positive impact on other people's lives and contribute to their success.
Thank you so much for sharing that story. Can you talk about belonging and service and challenge? Those three things that I've heard you talk about before, and how critical that is to having purpose, because that's what gets you through the tough times. That's what, like, you know, when it's 70 degrees out and sunny, it's pretty easy to show up and do the work. But when you're working 18 hours and it's a storm and it's, sleeting out, those are the times that there has to be a purpose that's fueling you beyond, beyond just showing up to work.
It is, and it kind of goes back to that chain of events that led to identifying where I felt my personal purpose, my compass, my true north compass, kind of guiding me. And it was really, I guess, eye-opening or mind-blowing. I did a poll with some of my first year apprentices on why they joined the industry. And during the first year, it is challenging, and you're away from home, you're on the road, you're not making a lot of money. You have somebody else really controlling your life, telling you where you're going to go, and you're not treated real well, and it's a struggle. So, why did we choose this industry? And the replies that I got back, and this was all anonymous, and three things brought three things were unanimous across the board. And one of them kind of varied on how they worded it. The one thing straight up was a sense of belonging to something bigger than themselves. And that's something that the trade offers, is that uniqueness to belonging to that group, whether it's just the belonging to the union or being considered a line worker, in the camaraderie that you get from that feeling of brother sisterhood, shared purpose. That's something bigger than myself, that we fight all these dangerous conditions and brave all the elements together as a team, working, watching out for each other, overcoming impossible odds to restore power, bring power back to the communities. And so that sense of belonging to something bigger than ourselves was that one. The second one was a sense of purpose in helping people. And for like a line worker, we're bringing power out to, whether it's a new building or restoring power after Mother Nature brought it down. And again, the challenges, the terrible conditions, cold, wind, um, all the dangers from the electrical system, sleepless nights, starving, mixed with the camaraderie of that group, that you're mixing those challenges together. And then the third element or third part to that that they came with was that challenge, whether that was a physical challenge, or mental challenge, the emotional aspect of it, and even the chip on the shoulder, proving that you are good enough, that you do belong, where maybe somebody said, college, you weren't good enough for college, or you're not cut out for this, and you'll never amount to anything. And being able to prove that you do have, yeah, you are good enough, that you do have a purpose. Those three things mixed together, really powerful, and it's exactly what this industry offers people. Um, you got that camaraderie, you have the impossible odds that now you're building and overcoming as a team, and you're doing good for the communities by bringing back power when people are suffering because the power's been out, and clearing the dangerous conditions off the road. And uh, when I read that and I saw the results and just kind of went over the data again, I was like mind blown, because it brought me back to why I really joined the trade too. And having that realization, it was really energizing, and I wanted to, pursue it even more and get back into it. And I think just the way that society and the world is today, a lot of us achieve the goals that we set out early on, and we maybe didn't set high enough goals or far enough goals. And it gets to where you're chasing more extrinsic type rewards, just the next raise or the next award of some sort. And it never really brings happiness. And when I focused on those pieces of it, the trade was extremely rewarding again, and it felt that purpose. And then being able to share that with other individuals and help them maybe gain focus back onto their purpose too. What really gets that person out of bed? What made that person join this industry? And overcome the challenges and the dangers and the time away from the family and the sleepless nights, all of that. It's extremely rewarding when you think about that again, and it encourages you to get out there and also bring that insight to some of your peers, or the next generation, help them keep focus on what really brings them true happiness.
One of our other guests on the Work Ready podcast, Eric Kapitulik, he talked a lot about mission and the importance of having a mission. You used the term, uh, your true north, purpose. I feel like all these words are interchangeable, but it's like you have to have direction. But his point was that you don't wake up with purpose. You don't wake up with a mission. It's something that you have to like wrestle with. You've got to like narrow down what are the three things that give you purpose or give you direction, that is your true north, that's your mission, that drives you. What are some maybe advice or guidance that you give to people who've never sat down and gone through an exercise of identifying what their purpose is, what their mission is, and how could they go about exploring that?
I don't know that there's a direct link to finding purpose. It's kind of a journey that you need to take on your own. And everybody's, I believe that everybody's purpose, we have shared purpose. There's also the purpose that has probably been shaped at some point in time through your childhood, that through whatever events that you've been through, that control the behavior even subconsciously that you do, and what makes you actually truly happy. And maybe that's providing for your family, or maybe that's helping other individuals. um, you know 100 different things that it could be. And it's just taking the opportunity to really sit down and maybe reflect back onto, when were you the most happiest? When did you feel the most alive at work? Like, what were you doing? Were you mentoring somebody? Was it one of these impossible puzzles or challenges that you had to solve to overcome? Was it that kind of piece of it? And maybe just reflect back on those times when you felt truly happy, like alive at work, not just satisfied or status quo. Like, you felt energized from work, and kind of investigate there, like follow that pathway. And what was it that you were doing exactly that made you feel that way? And it might be eye-opening to really find the direction that it is. And once you do have that purpose and you realize that and being able to lead with that purpose, it'll change your life.
I have a friend, and I remember he talked about finding his purpose. You use energize, but he used the example of like resonance, and when vibration is happening, and then you pair the vibrations so that it's in sync, and all of a sudden it goes from everything feeling chaotic to now it's in sync, and it amplifies everything. And I think that's such a great way to think about it. It's when you find your purpose, your direction, whether that's, in your career, whether it's through a faith journey, whatever it is, then when you're doing those things, it's like that wavelength is in sync and it just amplifies everything. And so I don't know, that's an image that for me, I was just like, oh man, that makes so much sense. Because as I've gone through that process, that's definitely how I've felt.
I, I do love that. And I'll make a comment there too, because it's still life, and life is very challenging, and you're always going to get, thrown a Y in the road or some kind of obstacle to overcome, and you're probably going to hit some turbulence along the way. As long as you're sticking to that pathway, it will even out again and come back to being steady. So just there's a lot of times that I've questioned still too, like I believe something so much and then you're not getting the traction or the response that you were hoping to really have or make an impact, or maybe you just feel that, well, maybe I'm not thinking right. Just still believe in yourself and follow that, and eventually that turbulence evens out and you're back to flying nice and steady again.
I love that. So, Ken, I've never worked a day in the trades as a full-time, lineman or apprentice. I worked for the county growing up on my college breaks on the public service crews and public utilities. So I did a little bit of the work, but one of the things that I've heard from people as I've been in the trades now for 10 years, just, as a consultant and interacting with a lot of people, is that for people who are motivated to continue to grow and advance their career, oftentimes they go from like frontline worker and then they move into a supervisor role, and then your career path tends to become less of the hands-on work and more leading people and leadership and making those decisions. But there's not a lot of training that happens to prepare you to lead people and to gain that leadership. And I know you and I have spoken about how you do a lot of leadership consulting, but what are some of the things that you found helpful? You gave some examples of some people that went ahead of you, who mentored you, who were influential to your development. What were some of the attributes that you saw in those people that, subconsciously you probably just started you know, to model some of those same behaviors to develop your own leadership? And what could people look for in, their coworkers if they're like, man, I really look up to this person and I want to learn from this person? What are some of those attributes?
So there's a few that we would touch here, and I think one that we just overlook is we put too much thought, or we value just the idea of a leadership position more than it is. It's not, because the leadership position is just a job. It's just management. Leadership is a responsibility and not the title. And I think the biggest, I guess, asset or gift that you can have, or tool, is to be human and to be open, vulnerable. As a leader, you're going to make mistakes. Admit that you've made a mistake, or that you don't have the answer, or that you need help with something. Allow your team to contribute, to, feel like they're part of the solution. Don't try and have all the answers, because as a leader, you will not succeed if you act like you have all the answers. You need to have a team around you, allow them to participate and be vulnerable, like model that type of behavior to them. And and be human and real. Like, we have emotions, we have struggles and challenges to overcome. Pretending that you're in this position, that everybody does what you say, your word's the final word, won't get you very far, and really will lead to accidents and lower productivity and bad culture. It's just that human element that you need to really have and and embrace and encourage and empower your team to contribute and be part of that solution.
And you hit on some really important things there because, again, please speak from your experience, but it seems like a lot of conflict on team comes from leaders who don't want to admit they're wrong, and they also lead from a command and control perspective rather than what you said, having the rest of the team participate in the decisions and provide feedback and come up with those solutions so that they can take ownership. And the other key component of leadership is also just being present too, so that they can see that you're willing to, maybe do the work, or that you see what they do and how hard they're working. Can you maybe expand on that, like the difference between those two leadership styles and the impact that that can have on culture?
Yeah, and you hit on a couple pieces there too. When you're on the cruise, that command and control, all it does is really limits the growth of your individuals that are working, your team that's working with you, your crew that's working with you. It's limiting their potential. It's limiting innovation. It's actually engineering probably a disaster or a safety incident to happen when you're just controlling everything, and your people are just going to do exactly what you say and not use the skill or the knowledge they have when they see a potential hazard upcoming or a roadblock. They're just following your orders, just mindless compliance to, do what you say, which we're going to be wrong because we make mistakes all the time. We can't know everything. There's too much, it's too vast, and there's all other factors that are coming in on, weather and real-time environmental conditions and just anything else that you can imagine that's going to have an impact there. And your people, your crew, your team needs to be able to be innovative and um, to be able to adapt to the conditions. And if they're just following orders, they're going to fall right into a disaster or an accident. And that, that style might have worked at one point in time when there was, very little in the way, very little traffic hazards and certain things. It still probably led to a lot more accidents than we ever realized. The way that the world is today, with being so dynamic, you really have to be human, like take that human element to it, empower your team to make decisions. Like, another big piece of it is not just the why aspect of it. Like, you have to explain why we do this procedure, why we're um, potentially setting a pole here, or whatever the task might be. What's the purpose behind it, so that we actually have some understanding and we can all work towards the same goal, or the same solution. Where when we just give direction, sometimes it's just mindless to that destination, and there's no reward when we meet there as a team, and everybody just wants to check the box and go home. And um, I just think it's not a great model to try and utilize.
So when I hear that, I think of a scenario where a crew's doing a pre-job brief, and maybe someone sees something that potentially could be a hazard, but they don't feel comfortable speaking up. Or maybe somebody's a little bit hungover. I mean, does that ever happen, Ken? Have you ever experienced that on a crew?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And they know deep down, I probably shouldn't be working right now, or I shouldn't be doing this task. Or someone on the team recognizes that, another teammate is maybe not quite fit for duty on that day. how as a leader or as a teammate do you create an environment where people can speak up, or you as an individual can say, you know what, for the safety of the team, we need to have a tough conversation here.
It- and that's a really important role for leadership, for anybody in a leadership position. And it doesn't even have to be, you don't have to have an official leadership title. I mean, you could still be the journeyman on the crew and not the actual foreman, and still have that responsibility, or I guess that accountability to your team for everybody's safety, and to really have that impact, and to watch out for each other's safety. Again, it's being vulnerable, and it's, as the leader, you have to start. Like, it has to start with you. You have to model the behavior that you want to see from your people, because you won't you can't just ask somebody to be this way, or say, I want to hold you accountable to this, if you're not accountable to it yourself. Like, you have to model that before you can ever ask your people to follow that direction, or to lead this way, or to act a certain way. You have to be the one that starts it off. So you have to model vulnerability. You have to admit, that you don't have an answer, or you have to be the one that admits that you made a mistake, that to demonstrate that it's okay to have a mistake, and you'd rather have that mistake brought up so we can solve it as a team, instead of waiting until it comes time to energize something and then it burns it down to the ground, and now you've got a bigger issue. So being able to just start that off where there's safety and trust that's built up on the crew, to share the condition that they're in, and really to check in with the people on your team, make sure where you're at physically, mentally, and maybe they're fatigued. How is it at home? Maybe they had a small child that's kept them up all night. Where are they at? Maybe they're having a fight with their spouse, and it's really evaluating where your people are at mentally, physically, from, maybe they were, like I said, up all night. So physically, they might be fatigued and might not be all there. And maybe it's time where they take a different role, and somebody else takes, steps up, and uh, I think on extreme ownership, what was it called? Duck and cover, or something
Yeah,
of that nature. And same kind of concept, where
cover and move.
cover and move. Yeah. Where you're really, sometimes it's a trade-off, and it's, you build up that camaraderie, that team mentality, where everybody's working towards the same goal, and be really clear on your expectations as a leader too. What you expect from your crew, what you expect for everybody when they show up, and stay consistent. If you're not consistent, it won't matter at all. So it's always consistency, and really clear expectations on the behavior, on how we're going to act as a crew, how we're going to interact with the public, how we're going to interact with other people, the example we're going to set. Just be very clear on those expectations, and then very consistent. And you have to model that first before you even hold somebody to that standard as well.
I'm going to run something past you. So a lot of the conversation right now on safety focuses on sticky stuff that can kill you. So it's the high energy hazards. We talk a lot about the energy wheel and identifying high energy hazards. And I think that all these frameworks are so, so important, because what it does is it provides, just the awareness and a framework for people to identify the hazards that exist. But one thing that I feel like is missing, and part of this sticky and the stuff that can kill you, is not having honest conversations. And it's also the human element. And I just feel like we've got to put the human at the center of the energy wheel, because everything that you just talked about, like, that person might have just, had a rough night, wasn't able to sleep. Maybe they, yeah, did have an argument. Maybe financially they're experiencing something. And so there are all these things that are impacting someone's presence of mind and their ability to identify hazards, or to, even speak up, that they're maybe not fit for the job that day. What role do you think the human does play in the bigger picture from a safety perspective, and how do we bring, as an industry, bring more awareness to that piece? Because to me, it's like you can do all those other things, but if you don't also focus on that human and their readiness to perform work, we're only going to get so far from an injury prevention standpoint.
And it's really ironic that you bring this up. I just had a conversation with somebody earlier on the capacity wheel, and that's what I said. I go, where's the human element at here? Really, I think what 80% of workplace accidents can be blamed on the human element to it. And it's not that nobody sets out to make an accident happen or make a bad decision. Uh, it's usually another factor, just like all the parts that you hit on. You're dealing with fatigue, which can reduce our reaction time and our attention, or dehydration, things that we've talked about in the past. And then the stresses and anxieties that you have from relationships, from children that might be having some hard times, parents that are struggling with health, and friends that might be struggling, or like you said, maybe financial stresses that you're on, and the risk that you really need this job, and if you don't, make enough money, that maybe you're not going to have enough to pay rent, or whatever that might be, that adds stress, that um, take up your attention, reduce your reaction time, and give you that tunnel vision that lead to the accidents. But there's all kinds of factors that factor into, are like pain, from an injury that you might have been experiencing too, that leads to that human factor. And I love the capacity wheel, that model there. As a crew leader or somebody that's been in the industry for a long time, you tend to focus on the big serious hazards, like the electrical ones, the getting in the bite, the pinches, and the gravity type things. And some of the more minor ones that you're used to dealing with, or you've dealt with for the past 20 years, you tend to overlook, yet we assume that everybody on the crew is the same as us and recognize those. And somebody's newer and they haven't experienced those, and it's still a hazard that can lead to a bigger incident or an injury, and it all has impact. And um, I like that capacity model, because then it generates, if used, generates the conversation. And if you use it correctly, it gets the involvement of everybody on the crew and gets a voice from everybody, and starts to generate the thought of what are the hazards, so we can point them out. And um, it's pretty amazing when you get other people's perspective. It's the pieces that you overlook, and you think that you're an industry expert and you've been in the industry for so long, and somebody that's brand new, maybe it's their first week, and they pointed out 3 things that you were oblivious to. So I really like that. And I agree with you that 80% of that wheel should be the human element as well.
Yeah, and I just thank you for that. I do want to also acknowledge that I think that these frameworks are incredible. It's moved the industry so far forward, and it allows us to put the direct controls in place so that people can fail safely. But if you can combine the human element with these other frameworks, it just feels like that's where the magic happens, and that's where we can really move things forward. But yeah, there's so many human factors that should be considered. So to me, that feels like an exciting frontier that we can all work towards.
Yeah, and it was, like I said, kind of ironic that we just brought this up. But one of the comments that got made to me of why that human element wasn't there is, maybe it was by design, because we know it's such a wide, big hazard, and there's potentially too much in there, that if we acknowledged it, that we would have to make a lot of adjustments out there, because the work model that we have with the storm and the fatigue and making sure, and we tell people to drink water, but we don't give them the reason why and how it impacts them, and driving in the vehicles for a long time, and being in the sun, and being away from home for a long time, and just not recognizing the impact that it has on the families, and to your um, mental health or fitness, with the relationships that you have at home, and the challenges that it introduces, and all of those factors that cloud your judgment and give you that tunnel vision.
Yeah, it's messy, but until you address it, it's just going to continue to, sit under the covers. So yeah, no, I appreciate you having this conversation because it's one that I don't think a lot of people want to talk about or they want to address. But I think that these are the things that as this becomes more part of the conversation, we're going to figure out different ways that we can support that human component in a much more holistic manner. And I think everybody wins when we do that.
Agreed. And it starts with the conversation.
So Ken, you now have transitioned into Lineworker Solutions, which is an awesome organization, and you're doing a lot of training with frontline workers and leaders. What are the things right now that you're excited about and that you're teaching people on the front lines?
The things I'm most excited about is the openness from a lot of like the new generation, even some of the older generation, when we look at the way things are and realize that it isn't maybe the best route and maybe there is a better way, and the openness to bringing the human element back and doing away with the old command and control and going towards that like the capacity model where in just the psychological safety and recognizing that we are human. We probably shouldn't be designing or engineering, taking the human element out of it, right? So we make procedures and checklists to engineer the human out of the equation. Yet that's our biggest gift too, is being able to be flexible and be innovative and transition skills that we've learned somewhere else to a new situation when the procedures changed or the conditions changed. And if we're just following that checklist, we're not necessarily going to be in the right position. And being able to utilize that kind of concept and more the psychological safety where we do encourage, vulnerability and not having all the answers, and encouraging individuals to have a voice, share what they know, ask the questions, and build trust where near misses get shared so that we can learn from them. And also the change from blaming the individual for the problem and maybe looking at the systems that we have in place that allowed that to happen. And that change in mindset, which 20 years ago, 10 years ago, people would have just laughed and said, put your feelings aside, get back to work, rub some dirt on it. Now there's a lot of openness and intrigue, I guess, interest into where this might lead us. And I'm excited and hopeful that as an industry and as a trade, we can venture down that pathway and continue to improve safety. Because if you're looking at the statistics from this year, with all the tools and technology, like safety incidents should keep going down, and they're not. They're staying at a plateau and actually increasing this year. And I think it's all because of that mindset. And we start to embrace the mindset that, we are going to make mistakes, that we're going to learn from those mistakes. Blaming somebody isn't giving them psychological safety. It's causing people to hide those mistakes. And we need to encourage people to, share their near misses, share the lessons that they learned, and not just have like a safety meeting or something and say, okay, this is your floor to talk. Also acknowledging that your voice is valued and we want to hear what you have so that we can learn from each other and have that kind of peer-to-peer support. And I'm getting that feedback, and there's a lot of people that are expressing interest in it, and there's excitement when we talk about this kind of different philosophy that's really encouraging to me. And we're seeing even leadership, like executive level leadership, that's buying into this and wanting to go that direction too. And I'm really hopeful that as an industry we trend that way and we start to see more fulfillment from work, less accidents, more enjoyable lives outside of work, and just a better industry overall.
Ken, I'd love to hear from you. You shared a lot about the demands that are placed on frontline workers. I mean, working long hours, storms, being away from family, all those different components, and yet, you do a great job at taking care of your body, your health. Talked about stress reduction and sleep. We've covered all these different things. What has been your formula that you've found has helped you in those areas? Because I'm sure it's not always been on track, and there have been times where it's like you're working a storm and it's like a week long of limited sleep. But what are some tips that you can give to our listeners in terms of how to invest in yourself so that you can show up your best? Because fatigue impacts stress, it impacts all these other things that help us restore.
I think it's recognizing, and we've had this conversation in the past, that your body is your biggest tool. You buy a nice truck and you take care of your truck and you wash it and you make sure that you're getting it serviced, and you you baby it, and yet you abuse your body, and that is what brings you food and supports your family and keeps you working and helps you progress. And you have that one tool that you need for the rest of your life. All of those hours that you're working to save for retirement that you won't get to enjoy if you continue to abuse the tool that you're using. I think it's just recognizing that you're not invincible, that your body does need proper care, just like you would be caring for your house, putting a new roof on it and making sure that all those, that you've winterized your pipes, all of that kind of aspects to your body too, that you are making sure that you're getting the proper hydration, proper nutrition, and the sleep, and how the fatigue impacts your health, and the foods that you eat impact your health, and stretching and moving to keep your muscles and joints and everything loose to prevent the injuries. And pretty much everybody that I know has had some kind of injury or event that's caused them pain that they have to deal with. And most of the time you kind of just shrug it off and say it's part of the job, when it really isn't part of the job. I mean, there's things that'll happen, injuries and accidents that will cause the little day-to-day dings. If we took proper care of ourselves, we wouldn't have those, and we wouldn't be taking all the Tylenols and Advils and maybe adult beverages when you get home, or whatever it is that you're trying to cope with. That's, can be the gateway to even more uh, types of recreational vices, or whatever it might be, that can lead to a dangerous pathway. And it all has an impact on you. And it's just realizing to take care of yourself and prioritize that. And even the relationships that you have with your family, with the people on your crew, at home, your friends, lead to your health too. And putting some priority into those relationships, you'll get a lot of health benefits and happiness from that, where just chasing the next overtime or the next carrot or the next toy that's going to make you happy for a day or a week, and won't keep you happy when you're retired, and you won't be able to enjoy it then. And it's, I guess, prioritizing what really matters, and it starts with yourself.
Goes back to purpose too, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
I mean, that drives every decision. Um, and I really appreciate you sharing that. I have a fundamental belief that your work should build you up rather than break you down. And, it is possible that someone could, with the right maintenance, with the self-care, making those decisions to invest in their movement health, their, nutrition, hydration, all those things, your work could potentially, build you up rather than break you down. And sure, we are going to experience accidents or muscle strains or things like that set us back. But wondering if you have any additional thoughts on that topic, and how to change that mindset, because you've heard me tell this story before. I mean, my grandfather lived with a mindset of like, oh, I'm just getting old. my work's broken me down. This is what I should expect. And I think there's a little bit of that old school mentality that, you get to the end of your career and it's like you replace both knees and your shoulder and you try to, take care of all that stuff rather than spending your career investing in the maintenance. And I'd love to hear your thoughts around that.
Yeah, and I've seen that, and early on too. Being young, you think you're invincible, and eventually it catches up, and you start to feel those pains. And I've had to overcome some of those pains myself and deal with that. And you can make an excuse to accept it and just deal with the pain and cope, medicate however you decide to, or you can take accountability and ownership of how your body feels and responds and put in the necessary work to stretch and make sure that you're fueling it properly, that you're hydrating it properly, and you're exercising or just going for a walk. In the improvements that you get, that you just accepted as a badge of honor or the way it was, it'll be mind opening or mind blowing to you how good you can feel just putting in the effort to want to educate yourself and seek additional type of treatments or tools to improve your health. Educate yourself on the foods that you're eating, and keep track of what you're putting into your body through hydration or through your adult recreation type things. And don't don't jeopardize your long-term enjoyment and happiness for just a short period of reward, and really look at the long picture and the memories and the enjoyment you'll get from a long healthy life of being able to go on your adventures, go on your fishing trips, go on your travel and see the world, spend it with your family, spend it with your kids playing ball and all that, or sit on the couch and eat some Doritos and have a beer and watch a movie, which will catch up to you and it'll shorten your happiness and the whole work. So it's really just being aware of that, educating yourself, and making that effort. It's and don't even do it necessarily for yourself. Do it for the people that count on you, for the people that love you, and for the people that you are there to support, your kids and the people that need you in your life. Like, you do it for them, not just yourself for that short-term enjoyment, whatever it might be. People need you, and they need you to be healthy and to be happy and to be active and engaged. And you can't do that unless you're taking care of yourself.
Well said, Ken. So going back to Lineworker Solutions, what are some of the services that you offer, and how can people get in touch with you?
You can get in touch with me, lineworkersolutions.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. You could find me on there as well. And the services that we offer, what I like, how I like to describe myself is being that voice that can help bridge the gap between the front office and the frontline workers. That us versus them mentality that's there, and being a voice that can help bring those two parts together and um, you know restore the culture so that we're a team and not just two opposing forces that are trying to accomplish maybe a same goal or something, and recognizing that realistically we all have the same goal in mind when we work for an organization, and being aligned and helping to bridge those gaps and change that thought process, and then also bring awareness to different safety aspects that might be, maybe it's the electrical hazards, the arc flash type hazards, um and the maybe the like the fatigue, the physical storm type situations that a person might be running into. And really, it's the focus is just on that culture aspect though, and um providing your frontline workers with the skills they need to transition into those leadership positions and be able to make a positive influence on their culture and train that next generation, so that we're all heading towards that same purpose or that same vision, and together as a team, and not like I said, those two opposing forces.
Ken, any final thoughts you'd like to leave the audience with?
Just how much I appreciate Vamosity and the work, Kevin, that you do, and even the other individuals that you've brought on as guests. It's honestly, it's just encouraging to see that there's individuals that are advocates for the industry. And if anybody's listening that has searching, or wants to contribute, to go all in and to contribute and find purpose and whatever it might be that takes you that way, and advocate and be the leader that you needed, really, and help us to be the change that we need to transition the industry and the world to a better place.
Man, Ken, thank you so much for that. And I just want to thank you too. Me being kind of an outsider coming into this industry and really wanting to learn and serve. Like you've been one of my go-tos. Like you always respond to my text messages when I have a question, or if I'm like, man, are people even going to resonate with this concept or this idea? Am I wacky thinking this? You've just been such a great advocate for helping me better understand the trades, and so just eternally grateful for that. Appreciate it anytime we can collaborate on conversations like this. I know that everyone gets better when leaders get better, and you're doing such good work on helping tomorrow's leaders improve and have more dialogue, be able to, you know, to speak up when they see opportunities, and to just lead that next generation. So Ken, thank you so much. Thank you to the audience for joining the Work Ready podcast. We're just grateful to serve you, and we're grateful to continue to learn, to wrestle with better ways of doing things, and we're so happy that you're here. Ken, thanks so much, and everybody continue to tune in. We've got new conversations coming up each week, and until next time, let's get to work.